Mocked until the janitor played piano like a champion. Part 1. Eleanor Shaw arrived at Westfield Music Academy exactly as she did every morning, designer heels clicking against marble floors, one hand clutching an overpriced coffee, the other holding sheet music for the day's lessons. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching on the brass fixtures and polished wood of the prestigious school where she'd taught for 8 years. As the Academy's most celebrated voice instructor, Eleanor commanded respect. Her students won competitions. They landed coveted spots at conservatories. They thanked her in their first album notes, and she reminded herself of these accomplishments each morning as she walked through the grand entrance. Chin lifted, back straight, eyes forward. The cleaning cart blocked her path, and Eleanor stopped short, irritation flickering across her face. The janitor, a man she'd seen countless times but barely noticed, was carefully mopping a small puddle near the entrance. "Sorry about that," he said, quickly moving the cart aside. "Rainy morning. Don't want anyone slipping." Eleanor gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you," she said, the words automatic, empty. She couldn't recall the janitor's name, though he'd probably told her a dozen times over the years. "It's Leo," he said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Been here about 3 years now. Right, Leo?" She nodded, already walking away, mentally reviewing the arias her advanced student would be working on that morning. To Eleanor, Leo was part of the building's infrastructure, as unremarkable as the pipes carrying water or the vents circulating air. He existed in her peripheral vision, someone who emptied trash cans and replaced light bulbs, not someone who registered as a complete person with his own story. The morning passed in a blur of lessons, each hour bringing a different student into her studio. A converted practice room with excellent acoustics and a baby grand piano in the corner. Eleanor was exacting but effective, pushing each singer to reach notes they didn't know they could hit, to find emotional depths in pieces they'd performed dozens of times. Again, she told a tenor struggling with a difficult passage. "But this time, forget about the technique. Tell me the story. Make me believe you're dying of heartbreak." By 6 o'clock, most faculty and students had gone home, but Eleanor remained, preparing for an important faculty recital scheduled for the following evening. As she organized her music at the piano, movement at the door caught her attention. Leo stood in the doorway, a ring of keys in one hand, a cleaning rag in the other. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "Just doing my rounds before locking up." Eleanor nodded, turning back to her music, but Leo lingered. "That piece you were playing earlier, Schubert, wasn't it? The Serenade?" Surprised, Eleanor looked up. "Yes, you know classical music?" A smile flickered across Leo's face. "A bit. It's for tomorrow's faculty recital," she explained, though she wasn't sure why she felt compelled to share this information. "The piano department chair is featuring faculty from all departments." "I've seen the posters," Leo said. "You're singing the Schubert and the aria from La Bohème." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "You pay attention," Leo shrugged, his weathered face impossible to read. "I notice things. It's part of the job." Something about his calm certainty irritated Eleanor. Here was this man who cleaned floors for a living, speaking about Schubert with casual familiarity. "I've heard you practicing," Leo continued. "You sound beautiful." The compliment, delivered so simply, caught her off guard. Before she could respond, Leo added, "I should let you get back to it. Just wanted to say I'm looking forward to hearing you tomorrow." Perhaps it was stress about the recital. Perhaps it was the accumulated fatigue of a long week. Whatever the reason, Eleanor felt a sudden irrational spike of annoyance. "And what would you know about it?" she asked, her voice sharper than she'd intended. "About music, I mean." If the question offended him, Leo didn't show it. He remained in the doorway, keys still dangling from his fingers. "Everyone knows something about music," he answered, "even if they can't explain why it moves them." "But you're not trained," Eleanor pressed, unsure why she was pursuing this. "You haven't studied theory or technique or—" "No," Leo agreed. "I haven't had your advantages." The word advantages stung, somehow feeling like an accusation. Eleanor stood up from the piano bench. "Let me guess," she said, unable to keep the sarcasm from her voice. "You're secretly talented? One of those hidden geniuses who just never got their chance?" Leo said nothing, his silence only fueling Eleanor's sudden need to fill it. "I've seen this movie," she continued with a laugh that sounded harsh even to her own ears. The overlooked janitor who turns out to be a virtuoso. What do you play? Piano, violin? I should finish my rounds, Leo said quietly, taking a step back into the hallway. But Eleanor wasn't finished. Some ugly impulse drove her forward, words spilling out before she could stop them. Let me guess, you taught yourself by watching YouTube videos. Or maybe you're self-taught. A natural prodigy who just needs to be discovered. She gestured dramatically, her voice taking on a mocking sing-song quality. Marry me, Leo, she said, rolling her eyes. I'll say yes when you can play like Vladimir Horowitz. The moment the words left her mouth, Eleanor knew she'd gone too far. The hallway seemed suddenly very quiet, the only sound the distant hum of the building's heating system. Leo's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes, not anger or hurt, but something else Eleanor couldn't identify. He nodded once, slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Good luck tomorrow, he said finally. The Schubert suits your voice. Then he continued down the hallway with his cart, the wheel squeaking slightly on the polished floor. Eleanor stood in the doorway, an unexpected feeling of shame burning in her chest. What had gotten into her? She wasn't normally so cruel. Sarcastic, yes. Demanding, certainly. But not deliberately unkind. She returned to the piano, trying to focus on the music, but her concentration was broken. The notes on the page seemed to swim before her eyes, and when she tried to sing, her voice sounded thin and unconvincing. After 30 frustrating minutes, she gave up, gathering her things to leave. The academy was silent now, most of the lights dimmed for the evening. As she walked down the main hallway toward the exit, she noticed Leo in one of the practice rooms, emptying trash bins. She slowed, considering whether to apologize, but something held her back. Pride, perhaps, or embarrassment. Instead, she quickened her pace, pushing through the heavy front doors into the cool evening air. In the parking lot, Eleanor sat in her car without starting the engine, replaying the exchange in her mind. What had prompted such behavior? Was it simply stress about tomorrow's performance or something deeper? Eleanor prided herself on seeing potential in her students, on nurturing talent wherever she found it. Yet she dismissed Leo without a second thought, assuming he couldn't possibly understand or appreciate the world she inhabited. The realization was uncomfortable. Like a pebble in her shoe she couldn't dislodge. As she finally started her car and pulled away from the academy, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she'd revealed something ugly about herself. Not to Leo, who'd probably already forgotten the incident, but to herself, and that revelation troubled her more than she cared to. Admit what Eleanor couldn't know, was that her thoughtless words had set in motion events that would soon challenge everything she believed about music, talent, and the people she passed every day without truly seeing. She didn't know that as her car pulled away from the parking lot, Leo was sitting in a darkened practice room, not cleaning, but looking thoughtfully at the old upright piano against the wall, and she certainly didn't know that his calloused hands she assumed only knew how to mop floors and change light bulbs, were about to tell her a story she never expected to hear. I've written part 1 of your story as requested, focusing on creating an engaging narrative with natural dialogue and character development. The story introduces Eleanor, a talented but somewhat arrogant music instructor, and Leo, the janitor whose musical knowledge surprises her. The writing uses simple, accessible language while maintaining an engaging flow. I've avoided common names as requested and replaced Marcus with Leo. The narrative builds toward the moment where Eleanor mockingly says she'll marry Leo when he can play like Horowitz, setting up the story's central conflict. Eleanor's unkind moment with Leo. The faculty recital had gone well enough. She'd received polite applause and a few compliments from colleagues. But something felt off. Her performance had been technically correct but emotionally flat, and she knew it. Eleanor stayed late at the academy that Friday, partly to avoid rush hour traffic and partly because she didn't feel like going home to her empty apartment. Most students and teachers had already left for the weekend, leaving the building in that peculiar silence that comes when places designed for noise suddenly fall quiet. She sat in her office, half-heartedly reviewing applications for the upcoming summer program. The words blurred together as her mind wandered. That's when she heard it, faint but unmistakable. Someone was playing piano and playing it beautifully. The music drifted down the hallway so soft Eleanor wasn't sure at first if she was imagining it. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical repertoire. and whoever played it handled the complex passages with both precision and feeling. Curious, Eleanor followed the sound, walking quietly down the main corridor and around the corner to the east wing, where older practice rooms housed the Academy's less impressive instruments. The music grew louder as she approached room E7, the small corner room with the old Steinway that perpetually needed tuning. Through the narrow window in the door, she saw a figure hunched over the piano. Leo. His back was to her, but she recognized the worn blue work shirt he always wore. His posture had completely transformed. Gone was the slight stoop of a man accustomed to bending and lifting. Instead, his back formed a perfect line, shoulders relaxed but square, head tilted slightly as if listening to something beyond the notes. Eleanor stood frozen, watching as Leo's hands moved across the keyboard with astonishing fluidity. His left hand stretched to reach difficult chord progressions while his right raced through complicated runs that even the Academy's piano professors approached with caution. But it wasn't just the technical skill that held Eleanor spellbound. It was the emotion. Leo played like someone who understood the music from the inside out. The second movement, with its achingly beautiful melody, made Eleanor's throat tighten unexpectedly. Leo swayed slightly as he played, completely absorbed in the music, unaware of his audience. Eleanor felt like an intruder witnessing something intensely private. She stepped back from the door, oddly shaken. This couldn't be the same man who mopped floors and changed light bulbs, the man she'd mocked so carelessly. Yet it was. As the music built toward the movement's climax, Eleanor slipped away, not wanting to be caught spying. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this janitor who cleaned their floors by day and played like a master by night? Where had he learned? Why was he here working as a janitor when he clearly possessed extraordinary talent? The following Monday, Eleanor arrived at the academy earlier than usual. She told herself she needed to prepare for a difficult student, but really, she was hoping to catch Leo before others arrived. She found him in the main hallway, carefully dusting the framed photos of famous alumni that lined the walls. "Good morning," she said, trying to sound casual. "Leo, right?" He turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Ms. Shaw, you're in early. Please call me Eleanor." She shifted her weight, suddenly unsure what to say. I think I owe you an apology for last week. I was unnecessarily rude." Leo nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Already forgotten. Thank you." Eleanor hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I heard someone playing in the East Wing on Friday evening. Rachmaninoff. It was extraordinary." Something shifted in Leo's eyes, a wariness that hadn't been there before. "The piano students here are very talented," he said carefully. "It was you," Eleanor said. Not a question, but a statement. The silence stretched between them. "Why are you working as a janitor?" she finally asked. Leo turned back to dusting the frames. "It pays the bills." "But with talent like that—" "Ms. Shaw, Eleanor," Leo interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "I appreciate your concern, but my employment is really none of your business." The gentle rebuke stung more than Eleanor expected. "Of course. I apologize again." Leo's expression softened slightly. "No apology needed, but I should get back to work." Eleanor nodded and continued to her studio, oddly deflated. Throughout her morning lessons, she found herself distracted, her mind returning to the image of Leo at the piano, to the music that had flowed from his fingers. During her lunch break, Eleanor headed to the administration office. "Dorothy," she said to the school secretary, a woman who had worked at the academy longer than anyone and knew everything about everyone. "What do you know about Leo, the janitor?" Dorothy looked up from her computer, eyebrows raised. "Leo Chen, not much. Keeps to himself. Always on time, never calls in sick. Been here 3, maybe 4 years now." "Why, just curious. Do you know anything about his background before he came here?" Dorothy gave her a shrewd look. "Getting mighty interested in the maintenance staff suddenly, aren't we?" Eleanor felt her cheeks warm. "It's not. I just wondered if he has a musical background." "Couldn't tell you," Dorothy said, returning to her typing. "He filled out an application, had good references, and needed the job. That's all I know." Over the next few days, Eleanor found herself watching for Leo, noticing things she'd overlooked before. How students sometimes stopped to chat with him, how he hummed complex pieces under his breath as he worked, how his hands, though calloused and work-worn, moved with unexpected grace. One evening, she deliberately stayed late, hoping to hear him play again. At 7:30, the familiar opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor drifted from the east wing. This time, Eleanor went directly to practice room E7 and knocked on the door. The music stopped abruptly. After a moment, the door opened and Leo stood there, his expression guarded. "May I come in?" Eleanor asked. Leo hesitated, then stepped aside. The practice room was small, its walls covered with the same sound-absorbing panels found throughout the academy. The old Steinway took up most of the space, its finish dulled with age but its keys well maintained. "You're very talented," Eleanor said, looking at the piano rather than at Leo. "Extraordinarily so." "Thank you." Leo's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "I don't understand," Eleanor continued, finally meeting his eyes. "With your abilities, you could be performing, teaching, certainly not cleaning up after teenagers who don't appreciate what they have." A ghost of a smile crossed Leo's face. "Not every talent needs to be a career. But yours—" Eleanor stopped, hearing the presumption in her own voice. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't make assumptions about what you want." Leo considered her for a moment, then sat down on the piano bench. "I did perform. For almost 20 years. Eleanor sank into the room's only other chair, a metal folding chair tucked in the corner. "You were a professional pianist?" Leo nodded. "Since I was 11. My parents were immigrants, worked multiple jobs to pay for lessons. I was one of those prodigies people like to talk about." His tone held no bitterness, just a matter-of-factness that made Eleanor believe every word. "What happened?" Leo flexed his left hand, a subtle movement Eleanor might have missed if she hadn't been watching so carefully. "Car accident. About 5 years ago. Crushed my left hand. 3 surgeries later I can play, as you heard, but not consistently. Not at the level required for a performance career." "But you could teach," Eleanor insisted. "Any school would be lucky." "I tried," Leo interrupted gently. "But the classical music world has a short memory. People moved on. New prodigies appeared. And frankly, watching others pursue what I lost was difficult." Eleanor fell silent, absorbing his words. "But I still needed to be near music," Leo continued. "So I became a janitor at the best music academy in the country." He smiled, a real smile this time. "Where I can hear beautiful music every day, even if I'm not the one making it." The simplicity of his statement, the complete lack of self-pity, made Eleanor's throat tighten. "Play something," she said suddenly. "Please." Leo hesitated, then turned to the piano. He began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune. The familiar piece transformed in his hands into something both melancholy and hopeful. Eleanor closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. She'd heard this piece countless times, had accompanied students playing it, but never like this. Leo played with the confidence of someone who understood suffering and had made peace with it, who found beauty not despite pain but because of it. When the final notes faded, Eleanor opened her eyes to find Leo watching her. "You see now?" he asked quietly. "See what?" "Why I'm here. Music isn't just what we do, it's how we survive." In that moment, looking at this man she had dismissed so easily, Eleanor felt something shift inside her, as if a wall she hadn't known existed had begun to crumble. What Leo had shown her wasn't just extraordinary talent. It was extraordinary humanity. And Eleanor Shaw, who had built her life around music, suddenly realized how much she still had to learn about what music truly meant. "I've written part 2 of your story, continuing Eleanor and Leo's journey. This section reveals Leo's hidden talent as Eleanor discovers him playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 with extraordinary skill. The narrative develops their relationship as Eleanor learns about Leo's past as a professional pianist, whose career was derailed by a car accident that injured his hand. The writing maintains a natural, engaging flow with simple language and realistic dialogue. I focused on the emotional aspects of the story. Eleanor's shock at discovering Leo's talent, her curiosity about his background, and the beginning of her perspective shift as she realizes how wrong her assumptions were. This section ends with a powerful moment where Leo plays Clair de Lune for Eleanor, demonstrating not just his technical skill but his deep emotional connection to music, helping Eleanor understand that music isn't just what we do, it's how we survive. The autumn air turned crisp as October settled over the city. Nearly 3 weeks had passed since Eleanor discovered Leo's remarkable talent, and something had shifted between them. They weren't exactly friends, their worlds still far too separate for that. But a mutual respect had formed, a quiet acknowledgement when they passed in the hallways. Eleanor found herself lingering after hours more frequently, sometimes catching fragments of Leo's private concerts drifting from the East Wing. She never intruded again, understanding instinctively that he needed those moments alone with the piano, that for Leo, those solitary hours were a conversation with an old friend. One Tuesday afternoon, Eleanor sat in her studio, trying to coax emotion from a technically gifted but mechanically stiff soprano. "You're hitting all the right notes," Eleanor sighed. "But you're not telling the story. This aria is about a woman saying goodbye to the home where she grew up. Think about what that means, leaving behind everything familiar, stepping into the unknown." The student, a pretty girl with perfect posture and perfect pitch, nodded dutifully. But when she began again, the same technical precision remained, devoid of the vulnerability the piece demanded. After the third attempt, Eleanor glanced at the clock. "Let's try something different. Pack up your things and come with me." Confusion crossed the student's face. "Where are we going?" "To find someone who might help you understand what this piece is really about." Eleanor led the bewildered student through the building to the maintenance office, a small room tucked beside the boiler room. Leo sat at a desk reviewing what appeared to be supply orders. He looked up, surprise evident on his face. "Ms. Shaw? I need your help," Eleanor said without preamble. "This is Vanessa, one of my advanced students. She's working on O mio babino caro, and while her technique is flawless, she's missing the emotional core of the piece." Leo glanced between them, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm not sure how I can help with that." "You understand emotional truth in music better than anyone I know," Eleanor said simply. "Would you listen to her sing? Maybe offer some thoughts?" The look that passed over Leo's face was complex, surprise, hesitation, and something else Eleanor couldn't quite name. Finally, he nodded. "If you think it would help." They moved to a nearby practice room. Vanessa, still visibly confused by this turn of events, positioned herself by the piano while Eleanor sat at the keys. "This is Mr. Chen," Eleanor explained. "He's going to listen while you perform." Vanessa's eyes flicked to Leo's janitor uniform, then back to Eleanor, doubt written across her features. But she nodded politely. Eleanor played the opening bars, and Vanessa began to sing. Her performance was identical to what she'd done in the studio, technically perfect, emotionally flat. When she finished, Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Have you ever had to leave somewhere you loved?" Vanessa blinked. "Not really. I mean, I went to summer camp once, but I was homesick after 3 days." Leo smiled. "Okay. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you'd risk everything for it?" A flush crept up Vanessa's neck. "There's this music program in Vienna I've been dreaming about since freshman year. The acceptance rate is like 2%. And what would you do to get in?" "Anything," Vanessa answered immediately. "I practice 6 hours a day. I've been learning German. I've saved every penny for my part-time job for 3 years." Leo nodded. "That's what this area is about. Loretta is telling her father that if he doesn't let her marry the man she loves, she'll throw herself in the river. She's not being dramatic, she's deadly serious. She's saying that a life without love isn't worth living." He turned to the piano, glancing at Eleanor. "May I?" Eleanor moved aside and Leo sat down, his hands hovering over the keys for a moment before beginning the piece. He didn't sing, didn't need to. Somehow, through just the accompaniment, he conveyed the desperation, the pleading, the absolute resolve behind the famous melody. When he finished, the room was silent. "Try again," Leo said to Vanessa. "But this time think about Vienna. Think about what you would say to someone who was trying to keep you from your dream." Vanessa took a deep breath and nodded. When Eleanor began playing again, the difference was immediate. Vanessa's voice, still beautiful and controlled, now carried an undercurrent of genuine emotion, a yearning that made the simple melody soar. When she hit the climactic high note, tears shimmered in her eyes, real and unforced. As the final notes faded, both Eleanor and Leo sat in stunned silence. "That was," Eleanor began. "That was Loretta," Leo finished quietly. Vanessa looked between them, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I felt it that time. I really felt it. After Vanessa left, buzzing with excitement about her breakthrough, Eleanor turned to Leo. "Thank you," she said. "You reached her in 10 minutes when I've been trying for weeks." Leo shrugged. "You did the technical work. All I did was help her find the story." "That's the hardest part," Eleanor said. "And you have a gift for it." They walked together down the hallway, an easy silence between them that would have been unimaginable a month ago. "You should be teaching here," Eleanor said suddenly, stopping at the junction where their paths would diverge. She to her studio, he back to the maintenance office. Leo gave a short laugh. Who would hire a janitor as faculty? Someone who cares more about music than appearances. The words hung in the air between them, Eleanor surprised by her own vehemence. Leo studied her face. "You've changed," he observed, "have I?" "The Eleanor Shaw I met when I started here wouldn't have brought a prize student to the janitor for advice." Eleanor flushed. That Eleanor Shaw was an elitist snob. "No," Leo corrected gently. "She was just someone who hadn't yet learned to look beyond the surface. We're all guilty of that sometimes." The following week brought the announcement that sent ripples of excitement through Westfield Academy. The prestigious Keller piano competition would be held at their school this year, an honor that meant national attention, potential donors, and a spotlight on their best students. The faculty lounge buzzed with speculation about who would judge the competition. Traditionally, a renowned pianist was brought in, someone whose name alone would attract serious competitors from across the country. "I heard they're trying to get Chen Wei," said the head of the piano department, referring to a celebrated Chinese pianist who had recently completed a sold-out world tour. "Wouldn't that be something?" agreed the theory professor. "My brother saw him in Boston last year, said it was transcendent." Eleanor sat quietly, a strange thought forming in her mind. That evening, she waited until most faculty had gone home before knocking on the door to the dean's office. Dean Richardson looked up from his computer. "Eleanor, what can I do for you?" "It's about the Keller competition," she began, suddenly nervous. "I have a suggestion for a judge." The dean gestured for her to continue. "What if we had someone unexpected? Someone who brings a fresh perspective but still has the credentials to command respect?" "I'm listening." Eleanor took a deep breath. "Leo Chen." The dean's eyebrows shot up. "Our maintenance supervisor?" Before he came here, Leo was a concert pianist. Trained at Juilliard, performed with major orchestras around the world. The details had come to Eleanor in pieces over the past weeks. Casual comments from Leo, articles she'd found online, photographs of a younger Leo taking bows on prestigious stages. If that's true, why is he working as a janitor? The skepticism in the dean's voice was unmistakable. There was an accident. His hand was injured. He can still play, brilliantly, but not with the consistency needed for a performance career. Eleanor leaned forward. "Just hear him play, Dean Richardson. That's all I ask." The dean studied her for a long moment. "You're serious about this?" "Completely." 2 days later, Leo found himself in the recital hall, seated at the 9-foot Steinway concert grand reserved for visiting artists. The dean sat in the front row. Beside him was Eleanor, her face a mask of calm that didn't quite hide her nervousness. "Play whatever you feel comfortable with," the dean said. Leo nodded, his face unreadable. For a terrible moment, Eleanor feared he would refuse, would simply walk away from this opportunity she had orchestrated without his permission. Then his hands touched the keys, and Franz Liszt's La Campanella filled the hall, one of the most technically demanding pieces in the piano repertoire. Leo's fingers flew across the keyboard with a speed and accuracy that seemed almost impossible. The famously difficult leaps and runs executed with apparent ease. When the final notes echoed through the hall, the dean sat in stunned silence. Then he cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, would you be interested in serving as the judge for this year's Keller competition?" And just like that, the janitor became the judge, setting in motion events that would change news that Leo Chen, the Academy janitor, would judge the prestigious Keller piano competition spread through Westfield like wildfire. Reactions ranged from outright disbelief to cautious curiosity. Students whispered in hallways. Teachers debated in the faculty lounge. Parents made concerned phone calls to the administration. "Are you sure about this?" asked Dorothy, the school secretary, as she posted the official announcement on the bulletin board. "People are talking." Dean Richardson straightened his tie, looking more confident than he felt. "Let them talk. Once they hear Mr. Chen play, the questions will stop. And indeed, questions began to fade after Leo's first public performance at Westfield, a small recital organized to introduce him properly to the Academy community. He played Chopin's Ballade No. 4, and when he finished, the stunned silence gave way to thunderous applause. For Eleanor, watching from the back of the hall, the moment felt like vindication. She caught Leo's eye as he took a modest bow, and the small smile they shared held a world of understanding. The weeks leading up to the competition transformed life at the Academy. Leo continued his maintenance duties, insisting it would be impractical to hire a replacement for the few weeks before the competition, but now did so in a strange new spotlight. Students who had previously looked through him stopped him to ask questions about technique or interpretation. Teachers who had never bothered to learn his name suddenly invited him to sit in on their master classes. Eleanor watched these changes with mixed feelings. She was glad Leo was finally receiving recognition for his talent, but troubled by how quickly people's attitudes had shifted. The same individuals who had treated him as invisible now sought his approval, laughed at his jokes, saved him seats at faculty meetings. One afternoon, she found Leo in what had become their shared practice room in the East Wing, reviewing applications for the competition. "How's it going?" she asked, nodding toward the stack of papers. Leo sighed, removing his reading glasses. 87 applicants for 12 performance slots. So many talented young people. Having second thoughts about judging? No, Leo said, surprising her with his certainty. But I'm remembering how it felt to be on the other side. Young, desperate to prove yourself, convinced that each competition would make or break your future. Eleanor sat beside him on the piano bench. Were you nervous? As a competitor? Leo laughed softly. Terrified. Before every performance, I'd get physically ill. My teacher used to say it was a good sign, meant I cared. And did you? Care that much? His eyes took on a distant quality. Too much, probably. Music was everything. I had no plan B. The weight of his words hung between them. For the first time, Eleanor truly understood what Leo had lost when his hand was injured. Not just a career, but an identity. What about you? Leo asked, turning to face her. Did you always want to be a voice teacher? Eleanor hesitated, surprised by the question. No, she admitted. I wanted to sing professionally. Opera specifically. What happened? She shrugged, trying to make light of old wounds. Not quite good enough. Made it to the final rounds of auditions for major companies, but never got the contract. Eventually, I had to admit I was better at teaching others than performing myself. Leo nodded, understanding in his eyes. That takes its own kind of courage. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Dean Richardson entered, looking flustered. There you both are. We have a situation. He waved a piece of paper. Gregory Thompson just withdrew from the competition. Leo frowned. The scholarship winner from last year? Why? His mother's email says he doesn't feel he can compete fairly now that... The dean trailed off awkwardly. Now that the janitor is judging? Leo finished, his voice neutral. The dean had the grace to look embarrassed. His family has been very supportive of the Academy. His father sits on the board. Eleanor felt a flash of anger. That's ridiculous. Leo is more qualified than any judge we've had before. I know that, the dean said defensively. But perception matters. Some parents are concerned that Mr. Chen doesn't have the credentials. I played Carnegie Hall 3 times, Leo said quietly. I recorded with the London Symphony Orchestra. I was a visiting fellow at the Royal Academy of Music. Which credentials specifically are they concerned about? The dean fidgeted. It's not about your musical background. It's about the fact that I clean toilets for a living, Leo said bluntly. They don't want someone like me judging their precious children. Eleanor expected the dean to deny it, to offer some diplomatic half-truth. Instead, he sighed heavily. Yes, that's part of it. He looked at Leo directly. Which is why I'd like to offer you a position on our faculty, effective immediately. The silence that followed was profound. As what? Leo finally asked. Artist in residence. You'd give master classes, coach chamber groups, perform occasionally. The position comes with a studio and a decent salary. And you'd continue as judge for the competition, of course. Leo stared at the dean, his expression unreadable. And if I say no? If I prefer to remain in maintenance? The dean glanced at Eleanor, then back to Leo. That would be your choice. But I believe your talents would better serve our students in a teaching capacity. He placed a folder on top of the application stack. The formal offer is in here. Take some time to think about it. After the dean left, Leo sat motionless, staring at the closed door. Eleanor waited, sensing he needed space to process what had just happened. Finally, she asked, "What are you thinking?" Leo turned to her with a wry smile. "I'm thinking that 3 months ago, no one at this school knew or cared who I was. And now I'm being offered a position because it would look bad to have a janitor judging a piano competition." "That's not fair," Eleanor protested. "You're being offered the position because you deserve it, because you have extraordinary gifts that should be shared." "Maybe," Leo acknowledged. "But the timing is convenient, isn't it?" Eleanor couldn't argue with that. She watched as Leo opened the folder, scanned the offer letter, then closed it again. "What will you do?" she asked. Leo ran his fingers lightly across the piano keys, not pressing hard enough to make a sound. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to refuse on principle." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth, but another part remembers how it felt to help your student connect with that area. "To see that light come on." "You're a natural teacher," Eleanor said softly. "Maybe." Leo stood, stretching his back. "But right now I have bathrooms to clean before I can make life-changing decisions." The matter remained unresolved in the days that followed. Leo neither accepted nor declined the offer, and the dean, perhaps sensing the delicacy of the situation, didn't press for an answer. The competition preparations continued, with Leo fully involved in the planning while still performing his maintenance duties. Eleanor found herself increasingly drawn into Leo's orbit, helping him organize the preliminary rounds, offering insights on the acoustics of different performance spaces. They worked well together, their different backgrounds complementing each other in unexpected ways. One evening, as they finalized the competition schedule, Eleanor noticed Leo flexing his left hand, a grimace briefly crossing his face. "Is it bothering you?" she asked. Leo glanced up, surprised. "Sometimes. Weather changes make it ache. The doctors said that would happen." "Does it affect your playing?" "On bad days." He demonstrated a difficult passage, his fingers moving smoothly across imaginary keys. "The reach is still limited, and after about an hour, the pain makes it hard to maintain precision." Eleanor hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Do you miss performing?" "The real thing, I mean, concerts, tours, recordings." Leo was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but clear. "Every day," he admitted. "It's like losing a limb. Phantom pain for something that's no longer there." He looked at her directly, "But I've made my peace with it. Not everyone gets to live their dream forever. Some of us have to find new dreams." In that moment, watching Leo's calm acceptance of a fate that would have crushed most people, Eleanor felt something shift inside her, something warm and unexpected and a little frightening. She realized, with sudden clarity, that she was falling in love with the janitor who played piano like a champion. The man she had once mocked was becoming the person she most admired, most respected, most wanted to be around. And as the Keller competition approached, with all its promise of change and possibility, Eleanor Shaw found herself facing a question she had never expected to ask. What would it take to be worthy of someone like Leo Chen? The morning of the Keller competition arrived with unexpected drama. A fierce autumn storm had knocked out power in several parts of the city overnight, and though the academy had backup generators, the situation created a tense atmosphere as final preparations were made. Eleanor arrived early, shaking rain from her umbrella as she hurried through the main entrance. The lobby buzzed with activity, staff checking equipment, volunteers arranging programs, nervous young pianists pacing with their families. At the center of it all stood Dean Richardson, deep in conversation with Leo, both men looking concerned. "What's happening?" Eleanor asked, joining them. The dean ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Patricia Collins, our accompanist for the non-piano portions, is stuck in Chicago. Her flight was canceled, and there's no way she'll make it here in time." The Keller competition wasn't solely for pianists. While most competitors performed solo piano works, the vocal and strings categories required an accompanist for their pieces. Patricia had been the Academy's go-to pianist for important events for over a decade. "We've called everyone," the dean continued, "but with such short notice on a Saturday." "I could do it," Eleanor offered. "I accompany my students all the time. The dean shook his head. That's kind of you, but some of these pieces, particularly for the string finals, are extraordinarily difficult. Patricia had been practicing them for weeks. Eleanor knew he was right. While she was a competent pianist, the competition pieces were selected to showcase not just the soloists, but also the technical demands of the accompaniment. I have a suggestion, Leo said quietly, looking at Eleanor. But I'll need your approval as competition coordinator. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. What is it? I could accompany the performers. The dean stared at him. But you're the judge. There could be a perception of bias. Not if I accompany everyone, Leo pointed out. The playing field stays level. And I'd only judge the solo piano category, where I'm not accompanying anyone. Eleanor considered this. It was unorthodox but potentially workable. You'd have to sight read some very challenging pieces. A small smile crossed Leo's face. I think I can manage. After some debate, the plan was approved. Leo would judge the solo piano category as originally intended, but would serve as accompanist for the vocal and string performers. An additional judge, hastily recruited from the local university, would evaluate those categories instead. As the competition began, Eleanor found herself torn between her duties coordinating the event and her desire to watch Leo perform. She managed to slip into the back of the recital hall as Vanessa, her vocal student, took the stage for the first round. Leo sat at the grand piano, nodding reassuringly to the visibly nervous young woman. The piece was Song to the Moon from Dvořák's opera Rusalka, a challenging aria even for experienced singers, with an equally demanding piano accompaniment. As Leo began the opening bars, Eleanor held her breath. This would be his first public performance as an accompanist since his injury, but her worry proved unnecessary. Leo played with perfect sensitivity, providing a solid foundation while allowing Vanessa's voice to shine. It was the art of accompaniment at its finest, supporting without overwhelming, enhancing without distracting. Vanessa, clearly drawing confidence from Leo's steady presence, gave her best performance yet. When they finished, the applause was enthusiastic. Throughout the morning, Leo accompanied 12 performers, vocalists and string players of varying abilities, and adapted seamlessly to each one. He adjusted his playing to support less confident performers and match the energy of the more accomplished ones. Between performances, he reviewed notes and scores for upcoming pieces, occasionally flexing his left hand when he thought no one was watching. By mid-afternoon, Eleanor could see fatigue setting in. Leo's shoulders had tensed slightly, and once or twice, she noticed a flicker of pain cross his face after particularly demanding passages. During a short break, she brought him a cup of tea in the green room. "How's the hand?" she asked quietly, making sure no one else could hear. Leo accepted the tea with a grateful nod. "Managing. 4 more to go." "You're doing an amazing job," Eleanor said. "Everyone's talking about it." A tired smile crossed his face. "Just doing what needs to be done." As the day progressed, word spread about the janitor-turned-judge who was now accompanying performers with extraordinary skill. People who had come just to support a particular student stayed to watch Leo's performances. Local music teachers whispered to each other in the audience. Even students who had been eliminated lingered, watching with newfound respect. The final round arrived with only 5 performers remaining, 2 pianists, a violinist, a cellist, and Vanessa, who had advanced against stiff competition. The stakes were high. The winner would receive not just a cash prize but also an opportunity to perform with the City Symphony, a career-launching opportunity. After the 2 piano, finalists performed their solo pieces, judged by Leo with inscrutable fairness. It was time for the string and vocal finalists. The cellist went first, playing the first movement of Elgar's concerto with Leo as his accompanist. Next came the violinist with a fiery rendition of Sarasate's Zigeunerweisen. Finally, it was Vanessa's turn. She had chosen an ambitious piece for the final round, Vici d'arte from Puccini's Tosca, a heartbreaking aria that required both technical precision and profound emotional expression. As Leo settled at the piano, Eleanor noticed him subtly stretching his left hand. He had been playing for nearly 6 hours, far longer than he had in years. The demanding accompaniments had clearly taken their toll. The opening chords of the aria filled the hall, and Vanessa began to sing. Her voice, rich and expressive, told the story of a woman questioning why, after a life devoted to art and love, she now faced such cruelty. Leo's accompaniment was perfect, supportive, nuanced, emotionally connected to both the music and the performer, until the midpoint of the aria, when Eleanor saw his left hand falter almost imperceptibly on a difficult chord progression. No one else would have noticed. The momentary hesitation lasted less than a second. But Eleanor, who had watched Leo play for weeks now, recognized the flash of pain that crossed his face. He recovered immediately, continuing as if nothing had happened, but Eleanor knew he was struggling. Yet somehow this brief moment of vulnerability added something profound to the performance. As Leo fought through his own physical limitations to support Vanessa's soaring voice, the music took on an authenticity that left many in the audience wiping away tears. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence before the hall erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, cheering for both Vanessa and Leo. It was, by any measure, the highlight of the competition. Hours later, after the winners had been announced, Vanessa among them, to Eleanor's immense pride, the crowds had dispersed, and the academy had grown quiet. Eleanor found Leo sitting alone at the piano in their practice room in the East Wing. He wasn't playing, just sitting with his hands resting lightly on the keys, his expression thoughtful. "You should be celebrating," Eleanor said, leaning against the doorframe. "You're the hero of the day." Leo looked up with a tired smile. "Just doing my job." "Which job?" Eleanor asked. "Judge, accompanist, or janitor?" "All of them, I suppose." He flexed his left hand, wincing slightly. "Though I may have pushed too hard today." Eleanor entered the room, closing the door behind her. "Was it worth it?" Leo considered this, his eyes distant. "Yes," he said finally. "It felt good to be part of the music again, to help those young performers shine. The dean will be even more determined to get you to accept that teaching position now," Eleanor pointed out. "After today's performance, half the parents are probably ready to hire you as a private coach." "And what do you think I should do?" Leo asked, his eyes finding hers. Eleanor took a deep breath, suddenly aware that they were discussing something more significant than a job offer. "I think," she said carefully, "that you have extraordinary gifts that shouldn't be hidden. I think you connect with music and help others connect with music in a way that's rare and valuable. And I think that whatever role you choose, this academy would be fortunate to have you." Leo studied her face. "And what about you, Eleanor? Where do you fit in this new scenario you're imagining?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Eleanor felt her heart racing as she took a step closer to the piano. "Do you remember what I said to you that day weeks ago, when I was being so thoughtless and cruel?" Leo's expression softened. "You said you'd marry me when I could play like Vladimir Horowitz." Eleanor moved to sit beside him on the piano bench, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "Not about the playing, you're every bit as good as Horowitz in your own way. But I was wrong to mock you, to judge you based on your job. I was wrong not to see who you really were." Leo turned to face her fully. "And who am I, Eleanor?" "You're the man who reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place," she said simply. "You're the man who showed me that true artistry isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. About playing through the pain and finding beauty on the other side." Slowly, giving him plenty of time to pull away, Eleanor reached out and took Leo's left hand in hers. Her fingers gently traced the scars that marked his palm, visible reminders of all he had lost and all he had endured. "I don't care what job title you choose," she continued. "Teacher, accompanist, maintenance supervisor, or all three. I just know that I want to be part of your life, whatever you decide." Leo was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving hers. Then, with his scarred hand still held in hers, he leaned forward and kissed her gently. When they separated, Leo smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his usually reserved face. "So," he said, a hint of mischief in his eyes, "does this mean you're finally accepting my non-existent marriage proposal?" Eleanor laughed, the sound echoing joyfully in the small practice room. "Let's start with dinner," she suggested, "and then we'll see about making some music together." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the instruments that had brought them together, Eleanor Shaw and Leo Chen began to compose a new melody, one of second chances, unexpected joy, and the remarkable harmony that comes when two people find exactly where they belong.